Uh, and we'll be
We
recording.
forgot to hit record, so we're starting now.
If you need to leave, just know that you'll be able to watch the recording when you get back into it.
And
so
you can keep.
Yeah.
What's the view here? Normal slide, outline, slideshow. Awesome. So you are here today to learn how to tell your unique career break story. And for some of you, this might be a really daunting task because for many of our students and followers, just the idea of returning to work after taking years off for caregiving and having to talk about it can feel really intimidating.
Well, and we get out of practice in talking about ourselves, right? We hear this from our clients, our students all the time. I don't really talk about myself. I talk about everyone else in my life. I talk about my children. I talk about my spouse. I talk about my elderly parents. I talk about everyone else but myself. And, you know, you telling your story is powerful, and we are here to help you find that voice.
That's exactly right. So Megan just gave a very nice introduction. Because it was not recorded, we'll just kind of give you ours. Kelley and I are both moms of 4. We both took career breaks and returned.
Yes, we have a combined 40+ years of experience helping women navigate work and life transitions.
And we've been recognized widely. We're on LinkedIn. We're LinkedIn authors. We have several courses there. We get invited to many conferences. We do corporate work as well. And with our help, many women like you have landed great jobs, and they've learned to tell that career break story to make that happen.
Yes.
Right?
And we come with recruiting and hiring manager experience and insights. And with our help, our clients and students from across the globe tell their stories, tell them well, tell them compellingly. And we are so happy to have you here today.
All right. So what we want to do today first is explain why and how you have to tell your career break story, not somebody else.
Right. And then present the differences between defense and offense storytelling. That is critical. And it's a great way to just set it up in your mind of when you fall into one category or the other.
We'll talk about the mindsets that will keep you on the defensive and how to combat those.
Yes. And then we're going to explain the foundational principle of a good career break story.
And we'll provide some scripting advice also for you. So you can walk away.
We'll have plenty of time for questions and all of that too. Okay. So why you must prepare and tell your career break story. So
no hiring manager, no recruiter, no network connection, anybody really understands why you paused your career and what you did during that time. So you have to tell them. And if you don't, they're going to create their own stories in their heads and you'll probably fail. So I'll give you an example. The very first time I interviewed a career relauncher was early in my career in tech, and I was probably, I don't know, 29 or 28 years old. And a woman named Nancy, we've talked about her a lot, came into my office, and she'd already been vetted by my colleagues, by HR. And so mine was kind of a rubber stamp interview because she'd be joining my team. And she had this blank spot at the top of her resume, and she'd been a stay-at-home mom. And she didn't do a good job. I don't think she really tried at all to explain what she did during that time. She had great credentials. She'd worked at Digital, which was one of our main competitors, but it had been about 10 years. And so in my mind, I was picturing at 28, didn't have kids. I wasn't really in that world. So I imagined
you didn't get it. But anyway,
I imagined her, you know, what do you do all day? I, sit at the country club, play tennis. Anyway, I didn't hire her. So that, that adage that nature abhors a vacuum, it's the same idea. If there's that empty space, you have to tell me what you did. Because if you don't, I'm going to imagine what you did, and it won't be nearly as good as what you actually did.
Right. And we believe this next point very strongly. No one else can or should tell your story. We are firm believers. You should be writing your own resumes. You should be the one that is speaking this out into the world and educating people about who you are. You want to elaborate?
You should be doing your own LinkedIn profile. Yes. Should be. The thing is, they're all foundational pieces. So when you're writing a resume and you're talking about yourself, that's your foundation. And then you're going to take that and make it into a LinkedIn, which is a little more animated. And then it's going to be the way you introduce yourself or the way you answer an interview question. And if someone else writes it for you, it's not your voice.
Yes.
It's not authentic.
And here is a little secret that you may not know, that we know very, very well, having done this many, many times with thousands of women and other people that are out there with career breaks. It builds your confidence back. So if you are feeling, I don't feel confident, I feel like an imposter, going through the act of creating these documents and creating these tools that you're going to use to job seek, it grows your confidence back. It makes you more articulate, and you are going to feel like, oh, I believe this, you know, because you should believe it.
The first principle that you need to not just read, not just think, but believe to your core is that work is work, whether it's paid or unpaid.
Yes, this is your thing.
That's one of my lines.
Yes, one of her lines.
But it's really important
Mhm.
because if you don't believe it, you will never convince me, right?
Yeah. The new skill and experience you gained during your career break, that's valuable. It's actually workplace currency, and you need to view it that way. You need to articulate that to the world that way. And we're going to show you how to do that. Yeah.
And the business skills that you refresh. So if you left work as a business analyst, but during your volunteer work, you've kept up with new platforms and learned some new skills, those things, or just taking what you knew before and learned it as new iterations of that program or software come out, that's important. These are the things that matter. So it's the new things that you've learned, but also the things that you've just kept up with during those years.
Yeah. And so are the results of all of those experiences that you've had during this career break. Those results matter. Those achievements matter. Those accomplishments all matter and are something that you are going to use and articulate to the world.
Yeah. So right now, you might be a little bit on the defense. Yeah. And this is how your story might sound. It might sound very insecure. You might feel a little bit ashamed about your time off. We hear this all the time. I'm too embarrassed to talk to my old colleagues. I've been out for 10 years. What have I done?
Yeah. We see this as a huge obstacle, especially when people are trying to create their LinkedIn profile. Yeah. Because
I don't want
they
anyone
just
to read
feel
me.
like, oh gosh, you know what? I left at this level, and what have I really been doing? And I feel kind of strange backing, you know, into this job seeking when they've climbed up or they're at this level now.
It's especially hard when someone you hired and trained is now 2 levels above where you left.
Yeah.
You need to get over that. You cannot feel shame. It'll come across in the interview or in the interaction as too apologetic, too grateful, to all these things that just make you sound insecure, which we don't want.
Yes. And you might be downplaying, right? So anything that you've done during your career break, you might be just thinking of it as small yourself. You're judging it yourself. And so you're talking about it that way, or you're not talking about it at all.
Or you're using diminishing words, which we'll talk about in a moment. You might be distrustful, so that wariness might come across in your interview. You might be distrustful that anyone's going to value what you do. So again, you excuse it, you minimize it, you apologize for it. And we want you to just kind of flip a switch and say, my career break is an asset. It's not a liability, and to go in there with that confidence.
Yes.
So here are some of the mindsets that might put you in that defensive mode.
Yeah.
And these are 4 voices that we commonly see that you just need to write now, like, silence.
Yes. So number 1, I wasn't paid, so it doesn't count. And as Susan said, she devoted a whole slide to this, everyone. That work is work, whether it is paid or unpaid. Many of you are doing valuable work that holds up the communities that we all live in. And you are making it easier for people who are currently working to do their jobs and do them well, because you are the ones that are holding up the communities, whether it be in your place of worship, whether it be in the school systems, whether it be in your town community. You are doing valuable work during this career break, and you need to see it that way.
And most importantly, we've been doing this now for, as Kelley said, a combined 40 years. We've been doing this as a company for 6 or 7. So this isn't just, you know, aspirational talk. We know, we see our students land jobs probably every day, definitely every week. We see them from across the globe, across the country, and even overseas. They are doing this. They are going in and they're boldly pitching their career breaks as an asset, and it's working.
Well, and I think even just in our own experiences that we've had, we have seen, if you took the totality of things that we did in the workplace when we were working, and then things that we've done where we were not paid, boards that we've run, you know, organizations that we've run, foundations that we've started. Some of those I would, in an interview today, I would pitch more.
I would leave with some of them because they were harder.
Yeah, exactly.
No resources, no pay, lots of stress.
Yeah.
Some of you, many of our students as well, work in a family gig. So they feel like, well, it's, you know, it's my husband's company. I'm just doing the books. It doesn't count, but it does.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Caregiving work never counts. Many of you, and we see this all the time, are really at the forefront of caregiving for children with special needs, caregiving for elderly parents, being advocates for your elderly parents, being advocates for your children. These are all important caregiving jobs that you're doing, but they are also valuable when it comes to job seeking and speaking about your
So
career
especially
story.
if you're a caregiver who is opening doors. So we've had a
Yes.
couple of students, or many students actually, with neurodiverse learners or children who are disabled,
Mhm.
and their work on behalf of that child is securing resources for other people. So it does count, which leads to that final bullet about advocacy. I mean, if you're doing legal advocacy at the state level to provide, we had a student in Canada,
Yeah.
Casey, I think her name was, who was doing advocacy work at the state level to try to get help for her child. And it was like e-learning materials. But her work in the major metropolitan area of Toronto, even though she was doing it for her child, it benefited many people. So advocacy work, if you're a POA, if you're an executor, those are skills. That's managing estates. These are all valuable skills.
Yeah.
So just that idea that any of these things don't count.
Yeah.
Just
Yes,
they do.
One just popped up for me with the
Yeah.
gig work that kind of goes is we have many students that will come to our courses and they have made multiple moves
Yes.
and doing, managing multiple properties,
Yes.
things like that. All of those things
Yeah.
really do matter. And you need to just start to put that into your mind and see it that way. See it that way.
All right. So the offense, the career break story on the offense sounds very different. It sounds confident.
Yes.
You lead with your career break rather than waiting for someone to ask you about it. And you lean into that break and you're animated and you're smiling. These are the ways that we show confidence.
Yes, it's authoritative. And what we mean by that is not that you come in hot, it's that you are educating people. You are teaching them who you are and why the work you've done in this career break is valuable, and you're speaking articulately.
And Nancy didn't do that.
Right.
So Nancy had an opportunity to teach me.
Yeah.
I didn't realize what people could do when they were 10 years as a parent because I wasn't a parent yet.
Yeah.
And so it was a missed opportunity.
Well, and I think there's a mindset shift that when you're going from, I am, I'm out there and I have to be perfect when I'm telling this story and I have to get it all right and correct, to, you know what, my job in this conversation is just to educate people, educate them about who I am and what I bring to the table. That little shift in just the way that we're framing, the way that we're thinking about it, it's not proving to people, it's educating people.
Right. And that's another more confident delivery. Specific. You provide clear examples of the work that you did, not all of it, just a select of the most sampling of the best stories so that people understand how that work specifically prepares you for the work that you are aspiring to do with their organization.
Yes. And you don't overtalk. We see this, that people feel like they have to tell more than they really do. You don't have to tell much. You have to be clear, succinct, and you have to be practiced in order to be able to do this, because we will have a tendency to overtalk, especially when we get nervous. So we're not going to overtalk. We're not going to overshare. We are going to be real clean and clear about what it is that we are sharing to educate people about who we are as we're job seeking.
So when you think that we mentioned about creating a script, this is the way that we believe that the best way of telling a career break story, kind of in this framework, right?
Yes.
So the first step.
Yeah. So you take them through, because I love how you say this.
All right. So the first thing, I loved my work and I was really good at it. And it was such a sacrifice to leave. But given my options at the time, it was the right decision. I'm really glad I made it.
That's number one.
That's it. I haven't told you I had 3 kids in 6 years. I'm not telling you that. I'm just telling you the basics, but I'm leading with, I'm really good. And it was a sacrifice. Many people consider a career break to be something that nice, that wealthy suburban moms can do because their husband makes a lot of money. Well, I'll tell you, for me, my husband makes a lot of money now, but when we had our first child, I was making more money. I was the big primary bread earner. It was a bit, or breadwinner. It was a big decision for me to leave my job, but I got 6 weeks of maternity leave. And, you know, I just knew I couldn't do it. I had every intention of going back. But then when the reality hit, I was like, I can't do this. So it was a big sacrifice for my whole family, but for me personally, because when I left, I felt like a huge part of my identity was gone. I really identified with my work. And at the time, this was the 90s, there were not a lot of women in tech. So there was it was a big part of my confidence and my ego too, to be honest. So it's educating with that first statement. I loved what I did. I was really good at it. It was a sacrifice to leave. And that's the sacrifice is really the educating part.
Yes. And, you know, this, that you were speaking in your instance with, you know, you left for children, but people leave for a whole host of different reasons. We have career breaks now for a whole host of different reasons.
It could be personal health. It could be mental health. It could be parental health.
Yes. And at the end of the day, the story for number one is the same. You left, it was a sacrifice, and, you know, you had but you're ready to get back in.
That's right.
Okay, so let's go to number two.
So the second one is during that time, I tapped into and perfected my professional skills and expertise, doing whatever you did, advocacy work, community leadership, some type of caregiving, maybe gig work, maybe part-time projects, whatever it is, you fill in the blanks. And I learned some new skills too. And then the third piece, I'm so excited now because everything's in place and I'm ready and eager to bring all of this experience back. My prior experience in tech, my more recent experience as a community leader and an advocate back into this role. And I'm so excited to talk about it today.
Exactly.
So there were not a lot of details given here. And this is the mistake most women make. They either say nothing or they say too much. They put a lot more time. When we filmed our first iteration of our program, we had 2 women come in and just practice role playing interviewing. And both of them spent more time talking about their kids and their husband. It took one of them, it took Dawn, probably like 90 seconds before she even talked about herself.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that you're very clear. And if using this framework and scripting it out yourself with the specifics about your career break and your work during that break will be really helpful.
Yeah. So even taking a screenshot of this particular slide could be really helpful for you so that you can use this structure to write out your details that are unique to you and your situation and really think about it. Because again, just that act, just doing that, you physically being the one that's writing this out, you are growing your confidence in being able to speak about it.
That's right. Okay. So one of the things we want to talk about, we go into much more detail about this in our program, but the elephant in the room when you walk in the room is always this. It's, I got the interview, maybe you clawed your way in through networking, maybe it's a friend of your sister's, whatever, you're there, and you're spending so much time thinking about when are they going to ask me about my career break? When are they going to ask me about my career break? So a couple of rules about that. If they don't ask, it's not because they don't know. It's because they've already written you off. And if they somehow don't know, because they haven't even listened to anything or read anything, as soon as you walk out the door and they look at your resume and they see that you haven't worked in 8 years, they're going to know. So that's the number one reason you should talk about it. But the number 2 reason is that if you wait, let's say they do know, most of them will know, and they do intend to ask you, but they're trying to be kind maybe, and they're giving you some time to talk, you're going to be so distracted about what are they going to ask me about a career break that your other answers aren't going to be as good as they can be.
Yes.
If you wait to get asked a question, you're coming in already on the defense. We want you to just lead with it. So in the very first question of almost probably 90% of interviews is some version of tell me about yourself. And that's where you start. Well, as you might have noticed on my resume, I had a great career in, marketing at whatever company. And then I took a career break. I loved my work. And then you go right into this framework. So lead with it, get it out of the way, show it in a confident way, be on the offense rather than waiting and maybe never getting asked the question and then it's too late.
Yes, because that energy will run the interview. That energy will run.
Exactly right. And it's not good energy.
Yeah.
All right. What do we got next?
A compelling career break story avoids the 3 diminishing words. So
and we highlighted it earlier, a little bit earlier.
We need to talk about these words. We feel very strongly about this. So, okay, go ahead.
So these are actual quotes from prior students. It was just a little part-time job, not a big deal. And then we find out it was spoken by the CFO of a startup that grew 450% when she was working part-time on her way back to work as a financial leader.
Yeah.
Not little.
Right. not little. It was just a volunteer position at a local hospital.
And this was spoken by a woman who was working on the what's the development side of Sloan Kettering.
Yes. And she ran their capital campaign. So that's not a just.
No. And then there's the but. Yeah, I worked on that big case, but it was so long ago. And this was a woman from LA who had led and won a groundbreaking
Crazy.
civil rights suit between a pedestrian and a police officer. I mean, huge. But these are the words that women at the top of their game
Yeah.
doing really important work,
Yes.
whether it was highly paid or unpaid or whatever. And these words just diminish your story. If you start paying attention to it, you're going to start seeing how many times you say, particularly that middle word.
Yes.
The just word is probably the most commonly used one.
Well, and we spend so much time with women. I mean, we spend hours of our week, every week, with women. And what we see and know is often these stories don't even come out until we've spent
Oh my gosh. We had one student
weeks with them.
We have a 10-week program, and it was like week 6 when we were working on her resume. And when she applied, she had said, because we asked people to give a description, and she said,
Oh, yeah.
I have an 11-year career break and I worked in advertising. Okay, so we find out on week 6 that Flora had an undergraduate degree, I believe from UCLA. She had an MBA, I forget from where. She had worked at BBD&O and Ogilvy and Mather. I mean, the biggest names in global advertising, and she had a PhD from Oxford. And all the way she described herself on the on-ramp to our course was, I've been home for 11 years and I worked in advertising.
Yeah. I think this is, no, but I think this is actually bringing about something that we didn't create a slide for, but I want to pull this out right now, is that there's a real mindset that we can get stuck in, that I'm bragging, right?
Yes.
That I am, I'm talking too big about myself. I'm bragging about myself. If you have done this hard work, you are not bragging. In this instance, you are just educating people about who you are. So again, this is where that idea of educating the people that you're speaking to really plays a role. And you have to quiet that mindset that says, oh, you're bragging, you're talking too much about yourself, you're talking about your accomplishments. There is, yes, we want to be humble in some respects, but this is hard work that you have done. This is a part of your story. This is a part of who you are. And if you don't speak about it with confidence and authority, then no one's going to believe you, or no one's going to find out. So there is a bit of a conversation that you're going to have internally with yourself that is probably going to say, okay, I'm not bragging. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just educating. Okay. Yeah.
And you better believe that all the young people and all the men are doing it. So you won't be alone if you're telling your story confidently. I think
we love all of them too.
You had hit on this a little earlier. I think it's really important for you to understand when you go in that career breaks are ubiquitous in the US. So depending on whose data you believe,
right.
McKinsey did a big report with Lean in 2015. That was the first one to measure career breaks. And at that point, 43% of professional women, so this does not include women who are in non-professional jobs. So 43% take a career break of over 2 years.
Right.
LinkedIn and Consensus-wide did a similar survey, maybe 2022, and they came out with, I think, 64%. Right. So we usually just say half. Half of all professional women are taking a career break. So this is not something that's unique to you. Right. And then the other piece of it that Kelley touched on is that they benefit everybody, including the person who's interviewing you. Yeah. So if sometimes when we're speaking to audiences, I will ask, if it's a male audience, how many of you are worried right now that the library in your kid's school has books, or that the playground is patrolled, or that there are chaperones on the field trip, or that the fields where they're going to have practice are cleared, or that the ice has a referee, or that the Sunday school has teachers? You don't think about those things because people like you, people like us before we had kids, do that. Right. So not that you need to have that kind of conversation when you're interviewing or networking with someone, but just know that. Know that what you have done has benefited people, and that you are not alone, that many, many people are doing the same thing and taking a career break of 2 years to 22 years. Yeah,
exactly.
Right. It's my little soapbox moment.
I love it when we get on your soapbox. All right. So that is what we have for you today. And we would love to answer any of your questions. Megan, if there are any questions, we'd love to do practice examples. If no one has any shares, then we can actually give you.
We can pretend some. Yeah. We have a small group today. So please don't be shy. If you're not someone who wants to be front and center on the camera, but you want to maybe put your idea in the chat, like, can you help me figure out how I would talk about this? That would be great. So we have one right here. I can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What if you haven't done
question.
something big? Yeah. Let's stop the share for now. What if you haven't done something big? And you know what? The truth is, most of us haven't done something big, right? So big.
But I just want to pause
Yeah.
for 1 second. I want you to evaluate that
just that
for
statement.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
That like really, really think about, what have I done during this time away? And maybe you are diminishing something. So just having a minute around that first, and then go ahead.
Right. And I think
save the second.
I think maybe we need to be careful about the examples we give, because the bottom line is most people are not starting foundations and
No.
producing films. And we
No.
do some students like that. Most people are doing the basics. They're doing volunteering on the PTO.
Yep.
Maybe, you know, sideline parent for the team or something like
maybe,
that.
Maybe ran a small event
Yep.
that, you know,
Yep.
you know, did some type of an event, but then, you know, managed volunteers in order to be able to do that.
That's right.
You know,
Solicited funds. they
solicited
develop-
funds. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So a lot of it is just in the presentation. So when I work with audiences of men, you know, I'm talking about how they can, you know, kind of build up whatever they've done to make it sound good. It's the same thing. When you're competing against other people, they're all trying to make what they've done, as small as it may have been, sound bigger. It's the same idea. It's just that it's a little less comfortable,
Right.
because females have a little more difficulty promoting themselves, as Kelley just mentioned, and also because what you're going to be promoting is slightly different than obviously regular paid work. But you decide how you tell it.
Yeah.
So let's use the example of
Yeah.
someone who's ran a small event for a
Okay.
school and, you know, volunteers for the soccer club,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
So what you would do is just, again, start with, well, I loved my work. I was really good at it. Maybe give a little bit of detail, top performing, whatever. And let's pretend it's a marketing person. And I had to make a really difficult decision. And, you know, when I started my family, we realized that we didn't have any support, and one of us is going to have to take the lead on that. And I chose to do that. And I'm glad I made that decision. But it was a sacrifice, because I really loved to work and I missed it. During my career break, I applied those marketing skills. So I worked with the Richmond Public Schools and did some marketing there. I ran a couple of events. I worked with a large athletic club and did promotions for them. Now, remember, you ran one event and you did a little bit of work for the soccer club, but notice how I'm making it sound. I'm not lying. I'm just keeping it general enough so that, and with the power of my voice and a few choice words, I'm making it sound like this is someone who really did a lot. And so now I'm, you know, my family has grown, and I'm so excited to bring my skills from when I worked in, you know, Procter & Gamble, my marketing skills, but also the skills that I developed during these last 10 years as a caregiver, keeping up with technology, you know, really brushing up on my skills for in planning events and doing development. And I'm excited to bring them to this role. So I'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of enough, right? The same thing on the resume. It doesn't have to have a lot of detail. It can just be, for those 10 years, you know, community leader or community volunteer or special projects manager, whatever. And this lists the 3 things that you did. The key in the resume, the key in LinkedIn is just to have enough there to cover the space that you were out. Because if it's blank, it, again, as I gave my example with Nancy, it allows the person reading this to imagine what you might have been doing.
Right.
Right.
And there's also the value to, if you are someone who worked in one industry and are pivoting to a new industry, is to highlight that, you know, that work that you've done in those opt-out years, to show that this pivot makes sense, to kind of connect the dots. Taking an expertise and, you know, a skill set from your former career life, and during this break, you have gained skills in this particular area that are now helping you to pivot to something new.
That's right.
So being able to articulate that to someone and use that as leverage.
You know, Megan, before I forget, I think the best freebie we should give them after this webinar is the one, and I'll find it if you don't have it. It's one that is in our LinkedIn course, but it talks about, this is the person's story. This is how they wrote it in a resume. This is how they wrote it as a LinkedIn, and this is how it became their elevator pitch.
Yeah.
I think that would be just kind of see how the story evolves. It's always the same.
Yeah.
But it's written in a slightly different voice.
Yeah.
So I
I'm
think that
happy to
was
share that
beautiful.
with you all.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Jennifer, I hope did that answer your question?
The other thing I wanted to say, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Meg. What
Oh,
were
I
you-
was going to say, if you find yourself, you're in your career break, you're thinking about going back to work, but you're kind of drawing a blank about, well, maybe I don't have these experiences to draw on. Well, maybe you're not quite ready yet to apply for that job or go, but you are still in the volunteering phase, doing that strategic volunteering, finding the roles that you can volunteer and fit into your schedule, or the types of positions or the events that you might plan. It might be a one-off, like you've said, maybe it's a trade show, maybe it's one event for a friend of yours, but that experience
all
can roll
counts.
into all of this. So now you're thinking about your way forward with that mindset.
I love that Megan's been hanging out with us.
I know.
You're so good, because that was actually, I was going to say, Jen, one of the things going forward is that you are going to only take on jobs or volunteer roles. You're going to seek those things that are going to help bolster this period of time in your life.
Jen, what did you write? Okay. That's right. Do a deep dive into what you think is small. But just remember, I also want to caution you, because sometimes people come to us and they've gone too big. Like they'll write CEO mom on their website,
not
or,
doing that.
chairman of the Davey family.
No.
You're not doing that.
No.
I mean, we don't want to make things we don't want to make things sound bigger than they are. We want to be honest. We want to be brief.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I want to see, as a hiring manager, I want to see that you've been meaningfully working to some degree, unpaid or paid,
Yeah.
during that time. But what I'm really interested in is, what did you do before that prepares you for this role? And who are you? Because at the end of the day, 80% of every hiring decision is, do I want to be with this person?
Right.
Right. I mean, when
hope
Kelley and I met once, and we had both been approached by other people, but it was like, we knew
Yeah.
right away. We interviewed each other, but we knew.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the same with most hiring managers.
I also think too, that when you're thinking about that whole idea of who am I connecting with and who is my audience, that's another element of this,
Yeah.
right? It's, it's really being clear about who am I speaking to, and how am I actually educating them about why I make sense.
That's right. And not everybody's going to get it. And that's okay. You move on. All right. So Jen, good luck at doing a deep dive of what you think is small, because I'm sure it's not small.
Yes.
One other thing I want to just mention, if any of you here, or you watching the video or watching us on LinkedIn Live, are concerned because you took what we call a tricky career break. If you took a career break for your own health.
Yes.
If you took a career break for mental health, or if you took a career break for an ill family member, and you weren't able to do anything beyond taking care of yourself or taking care of that person, we have a whole webinar that we did through the Mom Project. And Megan, if you can find that, sorry to put you on the spot, but it kind of talks through, how do you talk about that? Because if you were fighting breast cancer, you were not volunteering for the PTO.
Exactly.
How do you talk about that in an interview where your health could be a scary thing to bring up? Right. So we have a whole webinar just on that might be helpful for any of you watching.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
One thing I would add is maybe like the practice, like how can you go about practicing this little spiel? What are ways that people can do that in like low stakes way so that they're ready for it and comfortable with their response in an interview?
Yeah, well, number one, you should practice.
Yes. Yeah.
This is not something that you should just try to do
And wing
on the fly after you get off this call. First, you should write it out. That's
We're big believers
one.
in that.
That is number one. You should actually write it all out. And even if it's longer than what you say, it's giving you the opportunity to start to own. And when we put something down on paper, there's something crazy that happens that makes
But
it
isn't that like a
binding and real.
kinesthetic thing? Like if you write it, you
is.
remember it better?
Yeah, the educator in me is yes.
Yeah.
There's there's that kinesthetic piece of it, but there is something that it makes it real. It's like, this really happened. This really makes sense. And so just the act of writing would be number one. And then go ahead and talk about the ways.
So lots of different ways. I mean, it used to be you do it in front of the mirror. I do a lot in my car.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm doing public
Yes.
speaking, I practice in the
So
car, because
true. I
nowadays
do the same thing.
people just think I'm talking to someone on my phone, but I'm really just practicing my speech.
Yes.
I would recommend that you do an audio first and just do it on your phone, do a voice memo, just listen to it a few times, listen for a few things. Are you lilting? Women tend to do this lilting where they rise up on the end of a question, which makes them sound less authoritative, less confident, and frankly, less intelligent, in my opinion. So listen for those patterns. Listen for, are you talking too quickly? Are you sounding hesitant? Have you mastered the material? Do you really remember your script? So do it that way. But I also recommend that you do it on Zoom. So the free Zoom, everybody's got a free Zoom account. Go into Zoom and just record yourself and see how you look. There's a very good chance that your first interview, if not all of your interviews and networking calls, will be conducted on some type of video platform. So see, how do you come across? Are you animated? Are you using your expression? Are you smiling? Things like that really matter in the delivery because they show confidence. And you know, when I think about my hiring days, which were many days, confidence was such an important thing for me.
Oh yeah.
Because I wanted someone who I knew had the confidence to try things on her own and not be constantly needing feedback from me.
Right.
I wanted someone who was going to take risks. And company staffs are very lean right now.
Yeah.
We're being asked to do a lot more. So going in as someone who's going to be able to figure it out is a real asset. And you show that in your delivery.
And then find a low stakes opportunity to practice on first. So, you know, if it's a low stakes conversation with someone that you know well, that maybe you are networking with, or maybe you just want to practice this on, find that the low stakes way of delivering this one time first and get feedback.
Yep.
Just, it could be from someone who's a mentor. It could be an old colleague that you just set it up. You know what? I'm getting back out there and I am talking about my career break story. I would love to run this by you and just get some feedback from you so that you are in a very low stakes way, warming yourself up to speaking about yourself in this way. And then it's a great idea to just really, so then the stakes have now raised. Maybe you're going on a true networking, you have a true networking opportunity. Well, you want to practice the night before, use some of the Zoom techniques like Susan had said, do all of that leading up to it so that you feel confident. And then also it's great to start that type of conversation with maybe a breathing technique where you are just getting yourself calm, because we go straight into fight or flight when our nerves, you know, start to kick in, and our brains need that. That's great. It's like a rush of adrenaline, it's a rush of blood, but we want to bring ourselves back to that parasympathetic. So quick breathing technique that really works well is to breathe in for 5 seconds, hold it for 5 seconds, breathe out for 10 seconds, and hold it for 5, and do that for 3 rounds. That just gets you back into that parasympathetic where you are going to think more clearly. You are going to be able to articulate yourself better. So that's just a little.
And as you move through the process, if you want to practice a little more interview technique, there is a tool on LinkedIn where you can, it'll give you a question, you can provide your answer, and AI will then give you some feedback. The jury's out on how well AI can assess your interview, but it's one more tool to have in your arsenal.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Any other questions? Talked about tricky gaps, talked about regular gaps. Let's talk for a moment about the COVID gap.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Because my general feeling about a COVID career break is that it really shouldn't need calling out. I mean, you really kind of had to have your head in the sand to not know. So I think that's the one time when you may not need to define your break. If you took a break from 20 to 22, or even, 23, that can be easily glossed over, both on a resume, on LinkedIn, or in a conversation to say, well, as you can see, I took a career pause during COVID because I'm a parent and my children didn't have school. Before that, I did this, and now I'm ready to do this. I think we're probably just stretching it a little bit now. But for some people, your break may have been during COVID, and then maybe you've just done some gig work since you haven't landed.
Right.
And that's just, I think those years probably don't need the same type of definition that other years would, hopefully.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. All
Okay.
right.
No other
Anything
questions?
else? Any
Okay.
questions? So let's talk about what's going up on for us.
Yeah.
We are in week 6 of our
We
10-week career relaunch program. We
60
have
students right now.
5 cohorts of, well, actually our 5th cohort's only, I think, 8.
Okay.
A smaller
Yeah.
8, but roughly 60 students. We will be starting again in the spring. We'll have an onboarding. Megan, do you want to give them the details? Because I don't know the dates. Well, we have another session
I
coming
put
up.
it in the, I put it in the chat. We have an info session coming up Monday, April 1st at 1 p.m. Eastern, and it's all about the career relaunch course. You can meet some grads who've taken the course before, ask Kelley and Susan all the questions about it, learn the details from everything from the cost down to what is the work like, what is it, the outcome, what all the things. So you're welcome to join us on that Monday, the first Monday of April.
Right.
Yeah.
So just so you know, the way it works is kind of like this, except you would all have your cameras on, you'd all be talking. But the idea that we meet with you once a week, you're doing some work on your own, you have videos, you have workbook, you have all that, but we're meeting with you twice a week in this kind of format, in a group just a little bit bigger than this,
Coaching you, guiding you.
rehearsing, practicing,
Yep.
pushing you, holding you accountable. And then there's this lovely community of other people in your group. So you have your own opportunities, and they're always connecting. We have some really beautiful
know.
friendships that have come from
Yeah.
the cohort.
It's an
So
awesome
if you're at all
community.
interested, please join us. Come and learn a little bit about the program. Ask us specific questions about it. And we always have a couple of graduates from the program on those calls, and we let them have at it. So you can ask them questions
Yeah.
as well. All right.
Okay. Jen has a little
Jen has something else to
Okay,
say.
last office job was as a project manager in 2002. Layoff, started on photography business for 12 years, then had a child, took care of my mom. Assistant PM, okay. Has nothing to do with what I'm looking for. I don't think people are seeing past that. Why would a photographer want this job? That has nothing to do with it. So, Jen, I would focus on, when you're describing your job as a photographer, focus on the business part of it,
Right.
and not the creative part of it. Focus on the project management part of it. Focus on, so you're given a project, I need you to do a photo shoot for this food magazine, for example. And focus on the choosing the site, choosing the setting, working with the vendor, working with maybe other outside resources that might be doing lighting or whatever. Do your best to focus on the things that matter. So one of the mistakes people make generally when it comes to resume, LinkedIn, or even talking about themselves is they focus on the skills that are unrelated.
Right.
So for example, on the side, I teach fitness. I teach bar, yoga, and Pilates. I don't talk about that when Kelley and I are pitching the business. It is something I do, and I've done it for a long time, but it's irrelevant to my audience. So your audience is, if you want to be a PM, is going to be focusing on the mechanics of running a project, from concept through resource management through and product.
Right.
And so focus on that. It doesn't have to take up a lot of space. It can, it's okay if it's just a few bullets and your prior experience as a PM is longer.
Well, and you can choose. So, maybe you did a food magazine, maybe you did a wedding, maybe you did,
Yeah, the way to hold that is just to say
Yes,
select projects include. So you don't have to talk. It may be that you did 20 weddings and 1 commercial shot, but that 1 commercial shot gets the same weight on a resume or on a LinkedIn as the 20 weddings.
Exactly.
Select accomplishments or select projects include.
And like Susan said, you're focusing less on the creative aspect and more on the business side of things.
Now, if you, at the same time, were doing a lot of community leadership, like, it's hard to know because I don't know your exact story, but for those of you watching or here with us today or watching the recording, let's say Jen did part-time photography, and then the other part of the time she was raising your kids and doing leadership in the community. You could combine the two and just call yourself, what initials like JM, project management, and then just talk about, ran a photography business, and then 3 select engagements or 3 select projects include, leader in the Avon Public Schools, and then a couple of select engagements there. You could lump them together. Okay. Jen, just give us a thumbs up if we're close to answering your question, so we know.
Yeah, and
Okay.
thanks for asking it, Jen. Even just putting it out there,
Yeah. That's good. And so Jen is a long gap. We want people like Jen to know, I think the longest gap we've had of a student was 26 years. It was Anne, one of our early students.
Yeah.
Many of our students come to us in the 15 to 22
Yes,
range.
it's like the sweet spot.
Yeah.
Like 17.
Got a lot of
seems to-
17.
That's
Oh,
17
well,
years.
because that would be child is born and now
Yeah.
they're a senior in high school.
Yes.
But if you have multiple children, it usually runs into the 20s. So it is doable. We see it all the time. Okay. Great.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for
Question.
joining us. Oh, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Yeah,
please.
I like much better talking than writing. So I'm in a different region. I think most of you are from the US. I think the evaluation of the career break is a little bit different in Europe, in a specific country that I'm working for. So they say that everything beyond 6 months, if you do not have a kid, but you made a decision to make a career break, it is strange. And they start to thinking, okay, what is the reason behind? So you were applying continuously and nobody gave you the opportunity. Could be the case, but it sometimes has nothing to do with you. My question is a special case that I do not have an education that I have been working for 23 years now. So I'm originally in a completely different area, but I was in business. And I called the recruiter before I sent my CV, and he said, okay, show me your LinkedIn profile. I will have a look at it. He had a look at it, and then he said, oh, you had a career break almost 1 year. It will be almost 1 year now, but it was my decision. And then I said, yeah, that's true, because I was traveling. I made a couple of skills in a different area, like business consulting. And I also did, volunteering work, like career development for young women. And he said, yeah, okay, but you do not have the education like MBA or master in business. Why you have not been doing that? You should have used the 1 year to do that. And actually this was a very direct feedback, but that's true. So it made me think, okay, because I took my break to enjoy myself, and after 23 years to have time for myself. However, it put me into the reality that the recruiters see that, okay, you were watching in front of the TV, you made volunteering, you did all of the things, it's nice, but why you have not been studying? So I think this is the reality, and maybe it's different in the US.
Yeah.
This is one,
This is one
Yeah.
person, Nico.
yes.
So
This is one person.
no. Actually, I started to apply right now in the last 2 weeks, and in many cases, I got back the feedback that your qualification compared to the others is not okay. So it seems to be a general question. So, okay, if someone takes a long break, why she's not using it or he using it for studying? So the question is that in this specific case, I think it's a very difficult situation. How would you deal with it? How would you sell yourself? Because there is no good answer to this how to say approach, what is coming from the recruiters. And again, this is really typical in Europe. They find it strange.
Well, we deal with a
Great
lot.
question.
I mean, and I have a lot of private clients overseas because their timelines don't always work with our program. And Nico, where are you?
Yeah, I'm in Germany,
Okay.
but I'm not German, so it's even difficult. Yeah, they are very extreme certificate freak. So they need tons of papers about all of your certifications. So their mentality is completely different.
Yeah,
That was
I will say that Germany is unique in that way, but I want to call this out for your benefit and for everybody else. When you apply online and you receive a letter saying that your qualifications do not measure up with others, it's very easy to assume why they're saying that. Let me just explain something about applying online. There are 5 reasons that a job is applied, or 4 reasons that a job is posted online. Number 1 is that they actually have a job they need to fill. Number 2 is they're anticipating gaining a big client or getting business in the next quarter. So they're just filling the pipeline with resumes in anticipation of maybe needing someone in 4 months. Number 3, they're posting the job because they have the opportunity or the goal of being sold or purchased. So they want to look robust and strong. And what better way to look robust and strong than to show that you're hiring people, right? So again, it's just all for show. And then the 4th reason would be, I might need to replace someone, but in the meantime, I already have somebody that I want to put in this job. and I'm pretty sure they're going to take this job. So I'm going to put the job posting up so it looks like I'm complying with the law, which says I have to be an equal opportunity employer. But really, if this woman in the next department takes the job, I'm pulling the posting. We had a student recently,
Yeah.
a graduate of our program, who wanted to go work in a university setting, and she had never worked in a university setting. And so she was networking and trying really hard to get a job in a university. When she finally did, through networking, get an interview, they put her in a temporary role working for the chair of the biomed department. Big job for her. She was so excited. It was a 4-month contract. What they did, the first day they told her, they said, look, we really want you for this job, but just so you know, we're going to have to post it online through Indeed, through LinkedIn, through et cetera,
But it's yours.
to make it look like we're open, but we're going to give you the job.
Mhm.
So this is what happens. So Aniko, the best piece of advice I could give you, 2 things. One is you really shouldn't be applying online. No one who comes to us should ever apply online. You've got about a 10% chance of getting a job,
Ever.
of getting an interview, really.
Yeah.
So in the US, I don't know what it is in Europe, but in the US, only 25 to 28% of people got their job that they have right now by applying online. That's very low odds. If you take people out who do computer programming, who do application development, jobs that are very easy to determine whether someone can do them or not without ever having met them, then the rest of us who do regular jobs like marketing and operations and finance and accounting and law aren't going to have a shot.
And then
If
forget
you-
it with a career break.
Right.
or
If you have
unconventional
anything about your resume that's unconventional, a career break, a pivot, a missing certification, you're never going to get through it.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just, it's such a needle in a haystack type of proposition.
But there's a way.
So
Don't
what
think
we
that there's not a way.
So what
There's
we
a way.
teach you in our course, and we have plenty of stuff online if you want to look at some of our
Yes,
YouTube
YouTube
videos, I'm
channels.
sure we've done
Mhm.
it there, is to network. Find someone who can vouch for you. I don't have an MBA. You should see the jobs that I get calls on. I have no MBA, Aniko, and I have CEOs coming to me for coaching help. Sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this guy's coming to me. Does he know who I am? But he knows what I can do. He doesn't care that I don't have the MBA, right? But if he were going through, everybody comes to me by referral. I do no advertising. But let's say I had a website or a Google ad. People, and you know, they're looking at 100 Google ads. They're not going to come to me for coaching because they're going to see all these people that have all these letters after their names that might look better. But because people come to me by referral, be through networking, they choose me. It's the same thing. So the best way, and I don't care what country you're in, I'm working with a student right now who's Marseillaise, she's French, living in Australia. And it's the same thing. She's working her network. She happens to be also working her network of other French citizens within, or French people within Australia, because they have this cultural connection. And actually it was a connection with someone who was French that got her most recent job in Australia. But it is the same, using your network. LinkedIn is a great place to start. Make sure you have a very strong LinkedIn page. And we have, I think we have a LinkedIn freebie, and we have a very short, very inexpensive LinkedIn course that is self-paced that you might want to look at too.
Yeah.
But Aniko, there are many ways at getting into a job, and people may have lots of degrees and not be as good a candidate and not do as good work as the person who has fewer degrees or no degrees.
Mhm.
One of our most successful students is a published author, and a fairly widely published author of nonfiction, and never finished her undergraduate degree.
Mhm.
Right? So it happens. So just be careful about, number one, letting a couple of people tell you what makes you good or bad. And also interpreting what is probably just a bland, what's it called? You know, an automatic robotic response that, you know, other people are better qualified. Be careful what you're telling yourself about that. That's just what everybody gets.
Right.
And remember the 4 reasons. They're also getting it because the job is already full.
Yeah. And Aniko, that's why today is so important, what we're teaching you,
Mhm.
because networking and being able to tell your story in a compelling way, in a way that makes sense to other people, in an empowered way, that's not like I have a stamp on me that says I took a career break and it's a bad thing.
Mhm.
if you're able to educate them about why, what you've done during that career break time, and you've done valuable things in your career break. I heard consulting in there. And so just owning that piece of it and educating people that you're networking with about who you are and what you bring to the table is going to give you that leg up. You're going to have to come at this differently. That's all.
But I'm going to give you a little
Yes.
tips. If I were you, Aniko, the way I would handle it, and I don't know all the details, but I would talk about the 23 years of work and just say, I was fortunate to have been so successful that I was able to take a 1-year career break. I was able to spend some time with my elderly parents. I'm just going to make this part up. I was able to do some travel. I was able to do some reading. I was able to do some networking and research and determine that I'd like to make this career pivot and move into something slightly different.
Yeah,
With
I
full
think
confidence.
I think you mentioned the key problem here, because I don't think I have difficulty to sell myself if I'm at the interview. So I definitely do not shame myself for that. So I can sell myself in a positive way. I did
Good.
not get to an interview right until now, but now it was not the main topic of this training or presentation today, but actually I have the biggest takeaway that I ever had, because in my career life and also my networking is usually apply online. So we do it online, but maybe the world has changed and I have applied globally. So I think why I never got a response is not because of me, but it's because of the 4 reasons that you mentioned. The problem is that you moved abroad many times, because I'm not a German. So once you move to a new country, you lose connection to the previous life. And now, because I took this 1 year, I lost connection. I did not maintain it. It was my fault. So my networking really declined, let's say, and I move away from the area where I work for. So you have to build up the networking from scratch, especially in the countries or in the area that I'm interested in. So if you step
Well, let me
into a
put-
completely
yeah.
new country, then the networking, I see it okay, positive. So I'm a networking too privately, but not on the professional area. I actually hide myself, to be honest with you. So I realized that this is a problem. So thanks for all of these takeaways. It was not the main reason for,
But I want to give you
this,
one more thing,
training.
Aniko, one more thing. The workplace is global. LinkedIn is global. And 1 year, I mean, all right, right now I'm working on a book project and my editor said, I need you to tap into some of your very senior level contacts. One of them was a guy that I hired in 1992. So what's that, 21 years ago? No, 31 years ago. And he took my call right away. He remembered me. I remembered him. 1 year is nothing. That is not a long time to have been out of network. That is, it's like a blip. It doesn't even count in my book. So don't feel like because you haven't been nurturing your network for a year, they're going to forget you. A year goes like that. You've worked for 23, right? And the other thing is that doesn't matter where we work with many students. We have a whole program just for military spouses. They move sometimes every 18 months.
21 times.
Your network doesn't change.
Mhm.
Because we're no longer working only in the town where we lived because we don't have, we're traveling by horse and buggy.
Mhm.
We travel digitally now. So your network is wherever you've been. In fact, I would say that you have an advantage. You've got a broader network because you've moved around. So a lot of it is just the perspective that you use when you look at it. Okay.
I think it's mainly the personality, because if I travel privately, so in this perspective, I'm German. So if I travel privately, then I connect with everyone. But
Mhm.
when it is about the job, I'm an introvert. So I have not been on LinkedIn for a long time. I had to make something on LinkedIn just to show my positions, because you have to give the link, So I'm not happy with my LinkedIn profile. So I found it interesting that when I started LinkedIn, nobody did anything there. And within 10 years, it became a social media.
Yes.
And I'm
Yeah.
this type of person. So if
And
you
Nico,
are not doing this, then you are not in the community, let's say. So you do not have this LinkedIn networking, which I personally don't like. I understand the purpose of it, but I'm not this type of person. So
There's some of these things in this whole job seeking process that you have to get outside of your comfort zone
Yeah.
and do things that make you feel really uncomfortable. And Nico, it's another suggestion for Megan put a networking suggestion.
yeah, I
we
watched
have
it.
for you.
Thanks.
But also visit our YouTube channel, because we do a whole thing on LinkedIn. We have I think there's like Megan, isn't there a playlist, a LinkedIn playlist?
Yeah, we have
of LinkedIn and what's happening. We have to update that on the regular because LinkedIn is always changing.
Yeah.
And then Jen,
Jen, you had a question. So we'll wrap up with
more
this.
of a
With
comment.
low unemployment, it's still so hard. So, the unemployment numbers are really misleading. I
Deceiving.
mean, you've got, unemployment is low partly because a lot of people have left, and it's particularly women, to start their own businesses. So they're technically employed, but they're not employed by other like big companies. And there's also been a growth in probably jobs that are lower level than something that you would non-exempt jobs. So you're right. It is not an easy market to get a job. And I mean, we know that when our courses in the like late 20 to early 21, I mean, people were just getting jobs
Yeah.
left and right without a whole lot of effort. That's
Yeah.
not the case now. It takes it takes more work for sure.
It's the perseverance. I mean, we have
And doing
seen
it right.
Yes, and doing it correctly, number one, but
Yeah.
also that perseverance piece. We have a student that actually you were talking about.
Oh, the one who's
Yeah.
working
Yeah.
at UC.
Yeah, it took her a very long time. She made it multiple times, to that last interview and didn't land. And it is challenging. We understand that. We are not negating the fact that this is something that there are days where you might have to just take the day off from even thinking about it,
Yeah.
pretending like it's going well, and just be honest with your own self. But know and understand that if you are using the right strategies, really dive into our YouTube channel, check out our resources on our website. We have so much information about this particular lane. Those of you that have career gaps and are trying to find a job, we have so much information of how to do it correctly. This is our expertise. We don't branch out into a million other things. This is our expertise. So really take a deep dive, Jen, into our stuff, because I think it could be very helpful to you, but we know it's hard. We get it and understand it.
Any of the factors right now that we have going on, an election year, always a hard time to get a job because the markets are uncertain. The globe is not a safe place right now. We've got conflicts everywhere. And we have financial investment in some of these military situations. So with all that uncertainty, it makes it a little bit more difficult, but the process for landing is always the same.
Yeah.
And whether it's going to take you 6 weeks or 6 months.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, you guys can clearly tell that Susan and Kelley are passionate about helping women back to work. And we could talk about this for hours more, but we're going to wrap up now. You can reach out to us at info@preparetolaunchu.com if you have any follow-up questions. And connect with us on LinkedIn. A little bit earlier in the chat, I posted all of our LinkedIn connections. If you guys want to connect with us there, that'd be great. And we look forward to hearing from you guys soon.
And we hope that we'll see some of you on April 1st for our information session about our course, because it sounds like some of you might be a good fit for that program.
That's what I was thinking
Okay.
too. All right, guys.
Thanks, and thanks,
Thanks so much
Megan.
for being here today. Take care.